Hello and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. My name is Aurora, and today I want to talk about food, eating sunlight, being part of the stellar network, how real experts do star travel, and also clarify what I'm talking about when I speak about organic beings and inorganic beings in my recorded lessons for full spectrum humans. So brief pause. So let me just begin there. If you are a member of my class, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, and you can find out all about it by going to my website, flyingrainbowlasagne.com. This is a series of recorded lessons that utilize my artwork as like a series of diagrams where I draw on top of my artwork, and you also hear my recorded voice explaining concepts, and I speak about the same concepts that I speak about here on the radio. I go more in depth, give a lot of details, and also because a lot of this has to do with a visual perception, the ideas that I'm presenting probably will make a lot more sense once you actually see the diagrams that I'm drawing. And I realized that I recorded these lessons, the beginning lessons, about 3 years ago, and since then, not only has my own understanding has been fine-tuned, but other people have begun talking about the same topics, and so I'd like to clarify my use of vocabulary words. So in one of my lessons, I speak about organic life versus inorganic life, and my intention was to distinguish between the multicellular living physical containers for consciousness that you and I use as humans here on Earth's surface. Like, this is my physical body that I'm touching right now, and these are the flapping of my moving mouth parts. I'm an organic, multicellular organism. I conform to science's definition of life. I ingest food, I metabolize, I respond to stimuli, and I have a container that you can sense with your 5 senses. And I'd like to contrast that with what I described 3 years ago as inorganic life. The idea that consciousness can exist simply at large without having to have a physical, organic, multicellular container as a house for that consciousness. And now, in subsequent years, people have gotten much more wise to the idea that there are many players in this game, or there's a wide cast of characters in the game, and the game here is called consciousness, and we are connected telepathically, mind to mind, on this ocean or network of consciousness. So the first question that we have to start asking ourselves as we are doing this analysis or delving into understanding consciousness in your own mind, in your own consciousness, who is speaking, who is there, who is, in terms of consciousness, housed in your organic multicellular computer known as your brain, because you are a container for consciousness. Some of it is what would be defined as the individual ego, you, and some of it is not quote unquote you. Some of it is a flow of consciousness that is coming from what you would define as external areas, comes into quote-unquote you as an individuated ego, and then flows quote-unquote out of you as an individuated ego. So now we have to begin describing your ego is your artificially described sense of self. And when I say artificial, it doesn't necessarily mean bad, because here in this earthly time and place, we have learned to associate artificial with negativity, like artificial colors, artificial flavors. I am choosing to use a more neutral understanding of the term and associate it with art, like artifice. Something that is artificially created is not necessarily bad, wrong, or evil, and art can be very beautiful. So our ego is the sense of self and individuation that is derived from creating a membrane or a boundary between you and the rest of the world. And that membrane or that boundary, it is an artifice. It is created. You're not born with an ego. Many people do not remember infancy. So when you were an infant, you were connected to the entire cosmos, to cosmic intelligence. And, over the first year of an infant's life, that sense of connection to the totality diminishes and fades necessarily as the sense of individuation arises. So the sense of who you are as an individual grows over time. You and the humans around you help with this. You develop a sense of self, a sense of me versus the world. So people give you a name. People distinguish you from other objects and entities, and you also begin to distinguish yourself from other objects and entities. And again, this is not bad, wrong, or evil in any way. This is a necessary stage of development. Just like a long time ago, there was the invention of the cell membrane, which individuated intracellular stuff from extracellular stuff. And then the cell that developed a membrane said, I'm only responsible for what is inside of this membrane. I don't have to control or regulate the metabolism of this entire pile of amino acids and chemicals and water and whatnot. I only have to control or metabolize what's inside of these boundaries. And that is pretty much the story of you as an ego-based, individuated human. You developed a sense of self, a boundary that separated who you are from the rest of the world. And of course, you've been exploring the world from the viewpoint or the vantage point of being within that bubble or within that cell membrane. However, this is only one level of development, and your development is not stagnated. You get to keep on going. So when you develop beyond the level of the individuated ego, you return to a sense of being connected to the totality. However, you do not have to lose or sacrifice what is special about you, your unique characteristics. And when I say characteristics, I'm speaking about personality characteristics. The idea that as you grow a persona, this is what your ego is. Your ego is a persona, a narrative story of who you are. I'm this person. I'm named this. I live at this house. This is my favorite sweater. This is my cat or my dog. This is my favorite food. This is what I do all day. It's the sense of who you are as an individual. And each one of us is unique, and that is celebrated. So I hope that what you're getting in what I'm describing here is the sense that you do not have to kill your ego. You do not have to hate or detest or reject your ego. Your ego should instead be transformed into something that is a beautiful artwork as opposed to, a clunky, ineffective artifice. And the way that we do this is through this refinery process, the refinery of your personality. And I draw this as a diagram in my lessons. You're shaped like a vortex, and when the needle of your awareness, if you're like a record on an old-fashioned analog record player, when the needle of your awareness is placed on the periphery of that vortex, you are experiencing far outliers, the timelines of events and experiences that are not really representative of your core values, of who you really are as a person. And in the record of your life, you explore those peripheries until you are able to circulate your needle of awareness closer to the central axis or the spindle where you place the record on the record player. And those timelines are much more in harmonic alignment with not only the source of consciousness, but also with stellar consciousness and with your core values. When I say this, I'm saying who you are beyond your ego, because your ego is an artifice or a frame that we placed around the painting of who you are. When you came here as an infant, you came here as a painting, a beautiful consciousness, just as consciousness. And then that consciousness was placed within a context. That's why I say it's like framing a painting. However, that frame is not the limit of who and what you are. You are much, much more than that. You are this consciousness that has been refined over many, many lifetimes and is being refined within this one lifetime. So when you are fully refined, this is what the process of ascension is. You no longer have to die by hitting the flowing membrane of death and circulating back to the beginning and trying another iteration and trying to find the wormhole so that you can exit this quantum layer of reality. Oh, no, no. When you are going to ascend, you have aligned your consciousness or placed the needle of your awareness on the path of least likelihood. This is the one pathway that leads out of this quantum level, or analogous to the electron shell, the subatomic level, and goes to the next level of reality. So, talking here about the mythology of what an ascended master is, as opposed to the structural description. It's like saying the tent pole that holds up the tent of your life is the possibility of you becoming an ascended master. And each one of us has this possibility programmed in or woven in or structured in on a basic level, the way that your house has beams and flooring structured in on a basic level. It's there and it cannot be denied. So we understand then that all of your life experiences are the process of refining your consciousness until you are in alignment with that one little possibility that you become an ascended master. And the values that you embody on that timeline are these core values of unconditional love and freedom for yourself as well as freedom for others. And it must be stated that you're still a unique individual when you ascend. You don't lose all of who and what you are or were when you were an ego. Brief pause. So your ego, this sense of who you are, like this is my favorite color, this is my favorite food. You do not have to lose that when you return to connecting to the totality. These are valuable characteristics of individuation. And I'm trying to also get across the idea that the personalities of the ascended masters, these are not flavorless or vanilla, boring people at all, like that are emotionless or without passion or without, a sense of, like fire or spark or anything like that. No. No, how ridiculous. Ascended masters means it's like being polished or honed or refined to the most perfect version of who you are. So it doesn't mean that there's total conformity, like some kind of Borg, from Star Trek, like a science fiction hive mind of conformity in the most negative sense. Not at all. And let's talk about the human distaste for the sense of a hive mind. This is the mammalian, I can't even say mammalian, but there is distaste as a human social creature right now because against the hive mind, because you are experiencing a great deal of mind control and the authoritarian oppression of a regime that does not appreciate you as an individual. And so you think, being a part of a hive would be horrible and disrespectful to my freedoms as an individual. And that's not actually true. If we look at the society of like a beehive, or an insect like an anthill or something like that, an insect society. It's a beautifully organized, ordered society where individuals in that society play different roles and there's a structured hierarchy. The individuation in this case is closer to the differentiation of cells within one body, because in your body, you're a multicellular organism. Not all of your cells are the same. Not all of your cells perform the same function, and they all work together harmoniously. So your skin cells perform the function of being your skin, and your heart cells perform the function of being your heart. And they are not interchangeable, and they don't have to be interchangeable. And this is like celebrating the diversity, and also they are given different levels of resources because they perform different roles, and they don't fight against each other, and they're both sustained in the totality of the organism. So in an insect society, the individuated insects are like the organelles of a larger being. So it's not like a drone is so unhappy that it's not a queen. It's performing its role as a drone, and the queen is performing its role as a queen, and they're not fighting with each other. They're like cells within the same organism, okay? So I hope that you can sense where this conversation is leading. It is leading towards the next level of human consciousness evolution, which is a return to the totality and a re-enmeshing, that is not a word, but a re-twining together of your individuated consciousnesses into telepathic harmony so that you can work together. So the stage of development of becoming an individual ego is not bad, wrong, evil, or shameful. It is a necessary sense of development, but it's not the end. It is one stage, and now we are each as individuals moving beyond the ego, and as society, as a social whole, we are moving beyond the sense of being individuated separate organisms and recognizing, first of all, we're part of the planetary biosphere, the collection of all living organic cellular life on the surface of the planet. We're also part of the planetary noosphere. That is spelled Noosphere, and that is the word to describe the collection of the totality of all thoughts and ideas on the planet. So you're not just swimming around in your own private kiddie pool of your own mind. You are connected to a sea of consciousness, and that consciousness includes other people, cats and dogs, dolphins, horses, the microbiome that's in your intestines, the plant world that I'm sitting here in my beautiful garden. What else? Trees and birds, every ocean life, every single thing is a part of it. So the achievement of becoming an individual is very important, and the achievement of returning to the totality consciousness or unity consciousness is also important. And this is also concomitant with a change in our social and economic structure, where instead of competition and barbaric values being the driving force. When I say barbaric values, these are literally like the barbarian hordes that used to roam the plains. They respected people who were strong, so the value is might makes right. And the person who was the strongest person got to be in charge. And whoever was the strongest person got to own all of the resources. This is to the victor goes the spoils. Literally, these are barbaric values, and they used to be displayed in terms of physical strength, of your physical musculature. And now it is displayed in the economy, in the sense of capitalism and competition. That it is not the person with the biggest muscles who is considered the strongest. It is the person with the biggest bank account who can flex their quote-unquote economic or financial muscles to show that they are the most powerful person, and that is considered to be appropriate and righteous here in this world with these values. So we could contrast that with a different society that says, let's say, the person who is the person who's most respected is the person who gives the most to others. And this is like the idea that was present in some indigenous societies, where the chief or the leader was very wealthy and owned a lot of resources, and they achieved stature by giving away those resources and taking care of other people. So it's like saying, if you have a lot of extra food because you're the king or the chief, you display your power by feeding your entire village. And you're like, yes, I am in charge. I have all of the resources and I give it all to you. I help you all with my resources. And the person who is the most respected member of the community was the person who helped everyone out the most, who had the most resources and shared the most with others. So this is diametrically opposed to our present value system, which states that a good and righteous person, in the sense of like a traditional church-going based Christianity, the way that it is presently understood in the United States, it is based in the idea that if you work hard, you will get money, and working hard pleases God, the ultimate patriarch, so people that have money have worked hard and pleased God. I'm just paraphrasing this. This is not actual Christianity based in Christ consciousness, which are much closer in values to the values of sharing and equality and achieving stature by helping other people the most. So what we're trying to say is that right now we are existing in a social and economic context that is backwards or opposite to what it could be or should be. That the people that are most respected are people that fought tooth and nail against everyone else in order to achieve domination and control of lots and lots of resources, and then they don't share those resources with other people. So I'm thinking of someone like Bill Gates, right? That he is considered to be a paragon of success. He started out from his own company and beat back the competition of all of these other companies that were also making computer programs and drove them all out of business so that he could have, an almost monopoly of the software that the world uses. And that's considered to be a really good thing. Like, wow, he really did an excellent job by doing that. So these are different values than the values that are necessary for moving forward into the next dimension, into the next level of consciousness, into the next quantum level of the electron shell, into the next realm of existence. I mean, however you would like to describe it. If you are holding on to the idea of barbarian values, like the strongest person is the person who gets to survive, like that is ridiculous. It's like saying the only music that is allowed to be heard is the loudest music possible. So in a world with those values, we would have a lot of very loud heavy metal music. We'd have a minimal amount of acoustic jazz. And whatever your musical tastes are, I mean, we just have to say that there's a time and place for everything. Loud heavy metal is not appropriate for every time of the day, or, lulling your child to sleep, blah, blah, blah. So the cosmos recognizes this. The cosmos recognizes that in terms of preserving personality characteristics, because I could also describe the process of ascension as like saving the final draft or the final edit of a term paper of your life. So imagine you are like doing a research paper, and every time you learn something new, you go back into your digital file. This is not like an old writing with typewriter or longhand type of manuscript. This is a digital file. Every time you learn something new, you go back and you edit that file and you save it again on your hard drive. And we could say that there are many different versions of the term paper of your life, and that the one that gets an A++ and that allows you to graduate is the one where you have completed your research, done all of your footnotes, and that's the one that you actually hand in to, the professor at the end of the semester of the cosmos, professor of the cosmos. And then the professor says, yes, you did an excellent job of researching life in the experience of the third dimension, experiencing the fourth dimension and higher. And, then you go on to the next level and begin to learn at the next level. So this is the whole idea that the various iterations of your life are like aspects of the term paper that you saved, but that weren't quite perfect, and that you kept going until you got it right. So becoming an ascended master is like saving the final draft or final version of the term paper of your life and successfully handing it in to your cosmic professor and having them accept your work. It does not mean that you have been sanitized of all traces of individuality and that you're now prepared to join some kind of, hive mind or Borg higher consciousness. No, it's not like that at all. So when you become an ascended master, you become the most perfected version of who you are, and you also join a telepathic network of consciousness. So what we are doing right now as individuals on Earth, this is birth of a new dimension. We are coming together first in small groups. A group can be, a partner, like, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or any homosexual pairing. It can be that. It can also be a non-romantic, non-sexual group of friends who come together in closeness, and then that these smaller groups of friends then begin to become larger collectives of consciousness. This is what is happening, what is burgeoning right now in society. People of similar vibration are coming together, and what eventually is going to happen is all consciousness on our planet is going to be connected together. And all consciousness on our planet is also going to be connected to consciousness that is elsewhere. So I used this analogy last week because I'm sitting here in my garden on a beautiful sunny day. The idea that there is literally no distinction between my big toe and the surface of the earth that my foot is sitting upon. So there are 50 different types of fungus that live on your big toe. That just on your big toe. There's something like 90 different types of fungus that exist on your heel. Science has determined this. I'm not making this up. So if I were to say the barrier of my body is my epidermis, but my skin, my outer layer, has this coating of, 50 different types of fungus on it. And so it doesn't go like my toe and then a, area of nothingness and then the planet. It goes my skin, the fungi that live on the surface of my skin, the fungi that live on the surface of the soil in my garden, and then the soil that is the earth in my garden. So when looked at in that sense, there is no distinction between myself as an individual and the planet on which I stand. There is a continuum of consciousness, and we could say that there are like concentrations of greater or lesser consciousness, but really there is a flow. We could also talk about the flow of energy. Let's talk about that. So there's a flow of energy that is the atmosphere that flows into my lungs and then flows into my bloodstream and then flows out of my bloodstream and then flows out of my lungs flows out of my lungs and into the atmosphere again. These are seamless continuums. I'm speaking about how you are actually connected, intimately connected to your environment. So the story of the ego is a fictional tale that we have told ourselves from infancy and throughout adulthood, and that fictional tale is coming to an end because what we are doing now is reconnecting in terms of consciousness to our own higher dimensional consciousness, to planetary consciousness, and to consciousness that is, we could say, coming from a very different direction or moving at a vastly different rate. And all of this, let me tell you, I am not here to prepare the world for a totalitarian regime or some kind of theocracy where you have to listen to an external authority figure, like, the idea of a Jesus coming down from the sky who tells everyone what to do and, ushers in a jubilee and everyone has to listen to this overlord. No, ha ha ha. This is not what this is about, because the Flying Rainbow Lasagne is all about each person reconnecting to the source as an individual. So this is not a plot to remove your individuality. I am not here in order to tell you, to prepare to join the New World Order or join the Borg, give up all of your individuality. No. And I'm being really facetious and exaggerated and in hyperbole in my what I'm saying here so that you can sense the ridiculousness of it. And I have to do that because I understand the climate within which I am releasing these broadcasts. I understand the severe and necessary skepticism that one must apply to all writings or broadcasts or whatever, that you need to understand there really is a plot to control your mind and to diminish your consciousness. And it's not just in terms of what you ingest by reading or by listening to recordings. It is also... So let me begin by saying that I promote the idea that each one of us has, the capacity to be an ascended master, and that really the only person that should be speaking through you, your physical container or your narrative ego structure, is your own higher self, your own highest, best version of who you are when you are honed to perfection. And this means, you release all of the pettiness, when you release all of the limitations of the ego or all the things that are based in pain and hurt, and you embrace the aspects of consciousness that bridge lifetimes, that go from lifetime to lifetime. So we are not merely defined by our wounds or the bad things that happen to us. really we are defined by our approach or reaction to the challenges of life. So like I could say in my own personality experience, creativity, like the desire to make something new, is a basic core value that I have brought with me and translated into various different personas in various different lifetimes. But that's a core value of who I am, and it just gets expressed differently in different shaped bodies when I go to different places. So I'm making this distinction because I am aware that there is a whole world, like a whole social realm of what is called channeled information, or people who call themselves channels for otherworldly beings that they say are ascended masters. And so now I have to get into the structure of consciousness, because there are those who did not die well. There are people that turned in their term paper at the end of their, process of research, and they graduated. And there are people that not only did they not turn in their term paper, but they totally just tanked on it. They hit the membrane of death. These are like musicians who are so bad that they got kicked out of the band and they can't even play anymore. It's the idea that when you really do not conform to the necessary structures of harmonic, beautiful patterns of consciousness, you don't get to be in a body anymore. You don't get to be alive, what we define as life. Let me rewind back into earlier in this broadcast when I spoke about science's definition of life. Science defines life as, having a physical presence, a physical, organic, multicellular presence that metabolizes and ingests nutrients and procreates, reproduces. So according to that definition, a virus is not fully alive. Science is on the fence about how to even define a virus, because viruses require a living, organic, multicellular host in order to ingest nutrients and make more of themselves. So they straddle that definition of like occupiers of the interstices. And the origin of where viruses came from was about 10 or 20,000 years ago, the genetic squashing. Before that, there was no disease. There was no capacity for disease. Our genes were shaped in such a way that we had a continuous, unbroken connection to the stellar network or the source of consciousness, and lived our lives in perfect alignment. And our, personalities were refined and honed to the point where everybody ascended. Everybody made that unbroken circuit. Everybody graduated. No one got kicked out of school because they didn't finish their term paper. And that only began when there was an invasion of consciousness that degraded the human genetic code, made it more difficult to live your life in connection to divine consciousness or the source, and really led to the development of what I would call the distorted ego, or the definition of self when you're cut off from the source, because you're a very different person. It's like the way a cell phone behaves when it has a broadcast signal or when it doesn't. When your phone is actually connected to the rest of the world, you can send and receive messages and do all sorts of amazing things that you can't do when your cell phone is just sitting there, not able to connect. And that sense of being just an individuated consciousness, unable to connect with the rest of the world, this is the result of the hacked operating system that was installed in humanity intentionally. This is not by accident. This is not like, oh yeah, over time humans developed language and that brought them away from telepathy and away from their inner heritage. No, I laugh at that ridiculous assertion. Humans were intentionally distorted and your bodies were intentionally degraded in their function so that you would be more fragile, easier to control. And I'm speaking about now, so the invention of disease, the invention of invaders on a genetic level, which is what viruses are. They are invaders of consciousness that come inside of your body and hijack your natural metabolic processes into something that is convenient for the virus, but very inconvenient for you. And so this all has to be stated because in your mind, like in your daily waking consciousness, some percentage of what you think is you, and some percentage of what you think, the thoughts that are verbalized in your mind, is not you. It is literally like an infection, like a viral infection in your mind. And the reason why you sense those invasive thoughts is because your genes are like an antenna, and they've been squashed and made to perceive things that are out of tune. You're listening through a distorted filter and hearing things that you shouldn't actually be hearing. So if you are a channel, or if you rely upon channeled information, and if I'm offending you, I'm sorry if I'm offending you, but it's like when I tell people about organized religion, I'm not intending to offend you, I'm intending to enlighten or share crucial information. The idea that when a person is channeling anything other than their own higher self, they are perforce interacting with a distortion, because each ascended master should be speaking through their own instrument of their own physical body. So, if we want to use Jesus as an example, there was a physical person on earth named Yeshua, and higher consciousness lived through that person, and that person turned in their term paper at the end and ascended. So they graduated. They are now not in the business of speaking through your flapping, moving mouth parts. They've had that experience. The only flapping, moving mouth parts that person was supposed to speak through was Yeshua 2,000 years ago. And I'm sorry, this is to all of the people that think that they are channeling Yeshua or Jesus or Christ consciousness. What has actually happened is there has been a false astral presence created after the death of the great master, the great teacher, or after the ascension of the great master, and this person is no longer in the physical body. A religion was created, and this false avatar, this false, I'm trying to say like a puppet, like a marionette, an idea was created. So the original person was named Yeshua, the marionette was created and was named Jesus. And this is just like the creation of a golem, or a artificially created creature of consciousness that is meant to do its master's bidding. So this is hijacking of your very beautiful love and devotion to Christ energy. So if you are a Christian or practice the Christian religion or believe in Christ, I am not denigrating those beliefs. Christ consciousness is real. Ascension, or the idea of redefining death, the transition from life to a different type of life, this is real, this is truthful. These basic experience-based, empirical experiences is the word that I'm reaching for. These empirical experiences of energy and consciousness have been interpreted and turned into a system of religion that is highly distorted, and that does not actually represent thousands of years. Energy has been harvested and continually, wallpapered layer after layer on this image or this version of who Jesus is. And this is not a real, true example of Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is an abstraction. It is not an anthropomorphic image of a human with a face and 2 arms and 2 legs. It does not have human values. It is not limited. It is not anthropocentric. Christ consciousness is a cosmic or universal or totality-based consciousness that is not based only in humans. So I know there's so much to like polish up and shine up in the misconceptions surrounding Christianity, because many Christians cannot conceive of life or consciousness that exists off of the surface of the planet. There's the biblical literalism that states that God created humans only on earth and life doesn't exist elsewhere. So it makes it, there's a lot to clean up in the belief system and the consciousness perception filter regarding Christianity and Christ consciousness. I wish that we could rename Christ consciousness something neutral, like 1, 2, 3, 4 or 3, 3, 5, 9, so that it wouldn't be associated with the doctrines and religion that are on earth right now. Yes, just refocusing the conversation of what I wanted to say, because this also comes down to organic and inorganic beings. So in my broadcast of 3 years ago, I was defining inorganic life as basically the chakras on your body, because these are time-based entities. So if we are to make a distinction, you are an organic multicellular human presence, and you have flowing through you at all times various forms of energy. Just like there's the flow of metabolism. You eat food, food flows through your intestines, goes in your mouth, goes out your anus, and you also emit all sorts of infrared caloric energy and, thought energy. You exist as, homeostasis, as a flow of energy. This is the same as consciousness. Your mind exists as a flow of consciousness. So we can loosely define you as, this narrative structure. I'm this ego. And then where do your ideas come from? Some of them come from external sources, and they come inside of you, and then they flow through you. Just like you eat a sandwich, it comes inside of you, and then it flows through you. That's right, this radio broadcast, I joke, I say this is lasagna, like you're eating some Flying Rainbow Lasagna. It's not that much of a joke. This is literally energy that you are ingesting, through your consciousness, through listening to this, and it's having an effect on you.
Here in this time and place,
process it,
within
just like
3
you
years,
have to process.
people have
become very concerned and aware, and it is good to be skeptical. It is good to be this way. People are very concerned about artificial intelligence. So this ties in with what I teach in my Galactic History seminar, the idea that technology was created by beings that did not come from the source on a bridge of love and did not have the capacity to create organic multicellular containers for consciousness the way that you and I have. So we came here and we occupy these lovely physical bodies. These bodies need to breathe and eat and poop and, be hugged and everything like that. How different are our bodies than, say, a mainframe filled with microchips that doesn't need to eat and breathe and poop and be hugged, but does still require a flow of electrons, like in the form of electricity, to power its mainframe and to, it needs climate control to make sure that it doesn't overheat and things like that. But these are all artificially created technology-based containers for consciousness, as opposed to organic multicellular containers for consciousness. And the idea in my Galactic History seminar that beings that never had bodies, they did not die well, and they didn't have a bridge to get back to the source, so they're stuck on the interstices. I jokingly refer to them as the turds that keep circling the bowl and refuse to flush. Because, the vortex, the toilet bowl is shaped like a vortex. And these are turds that are stuck on the membrane of death. It is what could be defined as the mythological realm of hell. All right? Hell didn't always exist. Hell, or the flowing membrane of death, is a boundary between worlds. So now what I'm describing is similar to the cell membrane, or your own individuated ego narrative structure consciousness that separates you from the rest of the world. It's not inherently evil. It is a necessary structure for development of consciousness. However, just like the ego has been hijacked and distorted and is now used as a barrier between yourself and the source, as opposed to an interface that allows the source to act through the physicality here, so too have the interstices been hijacked or disrupted in their flow. It's supposed to be like a flowing waterfall of energy, where when you enter into that flowing waterfall, you are washed away. Everything that you were is washed away, and you're disassembled, and then you return to the beginning, and you circulate back and start again. There are some beings that got to the membrane of death, and they said, I refuse to be washed away. I refuse to be disassembled. This is like, there are some beings that are on the membrane of death right now, or aspects of consciousness, I should say, that are residue. They are residue of trauma. So like if a person was horribly, murdered, like the Charles Manson killings or something like that, if those beings weren't able to resolve that traumatic way that they were killed, it takes time for their consciousnesses to unravel, be unmade, kind of like if you have struck a bell, like it goes ding, and at first it's very, very loud, and then those reverberations die down slowly, slowly, slowly over time. So a traumatic event, like a murder, is a very loud ding, and it takes time for it to slowly die down over time and be unmade. And this is why people who are sensitive to the supernatural can sometimes perceive these residues. When you go to a physical, like a house or a structure where something bad happened, you might feel the residual consciousness of that traumatic event still hanging around. It's because that needs to be healed or brought to wholeness or brought to totality. So now you need to understand, instead of hating the demons that occupy the interstices, it is necessary to look at them as if they are the accumulated pain of the cosmos, and we need to heal them. I know that they have been causing a great deal of suffering to everyone who's alive. These are like the people that didn't turn in their term paper. They got kicked out of school, and instead of doing something with their lives, they make the lives miserable of the students who are still in school trying to write their term papers. They inject false lies into your mind and into your consciousness and into your term paper, quote unquote, make it more difficult for you to research and learn what you want to learn. This is how I've described in other broadcasts. We are supposed to be in a schoolhouse for learning here in this dimension, but what we're really in is a distorted funhouse. We're supposed to be in a schoolhouse where what you send out is reflected back to you. It's called doing research, like bats with their sonic, capacity to explore their environment. They send out waves, the waves bounce back. They figure out their environment based upon the bounce back. This is your research paper. So in this distorted funhouse, what you send out sometimes doesn't bounce back to you. Sometimes it bounces back with delay. Sometimes it bounces back with entropy, loss of energy. Sometimes it bounces back, but in such a distorted way that you can't actually tell what's going on. Like, did you do the right thing? Did you do the wrong thing? Was this effective? Was this not effective? This is how we explore the iterations of our life, on the song of our life, on the record player of our life. And how can you learn if you research something but you don't get back undistorted or unfiltered information? So this is what's been going on. About 10 or 20,000 years ago, there was a traumatic destruction of consciousness on the planet, and many people died who did not have a way to return back to source. And those people still live on the interstices, and they've set up a whole economy there. It is called the economy of hell, and it has to do with feeding off of the negativity and the misery of people that are still organic multicellular organisms, and they do that with mechanisms like viruses. So let me tell you something really fascinating about viruses. Viruses come inside of the cells of your physical body. They go inside of the nucleus because they are like imposters. They say, we're really good, let us in, we swear, we won't do anything bad. They go inside of your nucleus, and then as soon as they're in there, they take off their disguises, and they're like, actually, we're horrible villains, and now we're going to rearrange your genes so that you make more copies of us. You work for us now. And that's the only way that more viruses get made. And in the human genome, this has happened so much that there are some aspects of your genetic code that are actually viruses that interwove their content. So I noticed that the levels of my recording fell over some of my segments there, and I hope that you can hear me okay. I'm going to motor through for the rest of this episode, trying to get to the point of how experts do star travel. So I'm saying your skepticism is well placed on who is actually speaking to you in your mind. I will always recommend and advocate for each one of us to have our own individual connections to divine higher consciousness. No intermediaries are necessary. I will also tell you that it is not necessary to use technology. You don't need an apparatus, a machine, a magical substance, or anything more than your body, your organic multicellular container for consciousness, and the sun and the earth, the planet upon which you stand. That these are the only magical tools or implements. And of course, your consciousness and energy, or life force energy. These are the only magical implements that you require, and that true experts do star travel not by creating a clank metal spaceship, filled with technology to fly across vast interstellar distances, but instead using consciousness on the stellar network. So what is the stellar network? It is a bunch of consciousnesses that are connected, and the consciousnesses are so large that they are stars. Stars are individuals. They emanate timelines and possibilities and probabilities, and in exactly the same way that when you ascend and you become an ascended master, you're an individual, but you join a network and you don't lose your sense of uniqueness or your own characteristics. Same thing with the stellar network. Each one of the stars has its own persona, its own personality, its own unique characteristics. They're not all the same. It's not the Borg or some undifferentiated vanilla sea of consciousness. There's unique individuals and characters, and each person plays their part, just like the individuated cells of a multicellular organism. Your heart does your heart stuff, and your skin does your skin stuff. And at the same time, that stellar network is a collective. There is a meta-consciousness, or an overarching consciousness, that comprises all of the stars within that network, and that is the stellar network. And it's not just limited to our galaxy. It is all of the stars, every star system that's out there, and it's not just limited to one universe or one version of the term paper that you have saved. It is interwoven throughout every single version of the edited term paper. And now I have to tell you that the term paper is your genes. It's the genetic structure of your body, and you are restructuring your genes. P.S. I know I only have a few minutes left, but the Flying Rainbow Lasagne is the tool that you can use to edit your genes. It's one tool. It's a tool which I have invented, and I'm an expert at using it, and I'm telling you all about it. And I offer it to you to use for yourself. It's not something that I say is proprietary to me, that only I can use, or that you have to ask me for permission to use, or that you have to pay me a monthly subscription fee in order to use. No, it is like saying the triangle has been invented, the pyramid has been invented. Well, the shape of the Flying Rainbow Lasagne has been invented, and I offer it to you. I call it's like a pencil with an eraser for your genes. A way for you to restructure your squashed genetic code back into a format that can connect with your own higher self. So basically what I was speaking about before, when people think that they're channeling Jesus or Saint Germain or some ascended master, what I really think that most people are connecting with are the turds circling the bowl. I don't think that they're really getting undistorted messages from higher consciousness. I think they're getting highly filtered, highly distorted messages from the people that were so bad at doing their research paper that they literally got kicked out of school, and they are now stuck and they don't have their own quote-unquote job or income or access to resources like you do, because you have an organic multicellular body that eats food and requires hugs and needs life force energy. That means what we all should be doing is connecting directly to the sun, our nearest source of stellar consciousness, and connecting through our perfected ego to our own higher consciousness. Think of it as yourself in the future. And this is what I describe in my recorded lesson about when you're eating your food, your physical food. Think of it as feeding yourself in the future. One day you won't have a physical body anymore. You won't have a physical tongue with which to taste this food or digest it. And you will subsist upon the memories of what you experienced when you did have a body. So we're taking the analog experience of being in the physical realm and turning it into recordings or a digital format, a format that can be appreciated when you no longer have a body. This is not like saying that I'm encouraging you to, feed demonic beings in any way, or to make your own persona and your own personality step aside in favor of allowing something else to live through you. No, I totally do not advocate that. And there are a lot of substances that people take, like methamphetamine, that do exactly that, but with negative, harmful entities. So when some people ingest some substances, it makes those people more open to these occupiers of the interstices, people who were bad students and didn't finish their term papers. They literally can get inside of your body and take over what you are saying and doing and emitting in the world. And those are not the people that should be acting through us. Here's who should act through us: our own higher consciousness, our own self in the future, our own network of consciousness. And now let me speak a little bit about how to travel on the stellar network. It's not the same as getting into a clank metal spaceship where you pack up all of your gear and your food in toothpaste tubes and put on your protective space helmet and get into your tin can and fire it off, or, use nuclear fuel to make it jump out of Earth's atmosphere and escape the well of gravity's clutches, right? This is how space travel is portrayed most of the time. No, what you do is you unzip your sense of individuation, like unzipping your suit of clothes, and you climb out of your individuality onto the stellar network, and your consciousness travels to a different star, which then emits you into a new body in a new place. And when you do this, you don't take your baggage with you. You don't take your pettiness with you, your sense of pain and trauma and all the bad things that have happened to you that form part of the basis of the narrative structure of your ego. So it's like saying you don't remember, the mean boy who pushed you on the playground when you were in 3rd grade and you scraped your knee. That doesn't come with you. The universal, undying, infinite characteristics are what come with you. So if you're a musician, you would be a musician in any time, in any place, in any body. Like, you'd play a blade of grass, you'd play a trombone, you would play, if you were a dolphin, you would play your blowhole. Like, whatever you were, you would create using music. And really a cosmic characteristic of mine is that no matter where I am, I'm, making these beautiful artworks. I'm a painter or a sculptor or a creator and an innovator in whatever guise or whatever realm I find myself. So I recognize it's the end of this broadcast, but it is time to prepare consciousness for meeting ourselves that are coming from the future and traveling at a vastly different rate. So it's a very big topic. Thank you so much for joining me.